Years ago, I was trying to walk away from something that was keeping me stuck in an excruciating place. I didn't know how to do that, of course. I just knew that something had to change and I could not stay where I was. At the time, I was unwilling or maybe just unable to accept my reality as fixed, the constant undertone for the rest of my life. And like a lot of people who have experienced this moment, I was desperate for answers, for wisdom, for someone, anyone to tell me how to do something I probably already knew how to do, but didn't trust myself enough to believe. I think what I really needed was permission. Permission to let go of something familiar, even though the familiarity had become more dangerous than the unknown. So that's when I came across an Irish philosopher named John O'Donohue. I was really looking, you guys. And this idea he wrote about in particular really spoke to me, and it stayed with me ever since. Thresholds. These moments in life when you move from one world into another, sometimes willingly, other times kicking and screaming. He believed that true thresholds don't really announce themselves. Oftentimes, you only realize you've crossed one when the old way of seeing no longer works, when going back becomes impossible. Because in crossing that threshold and knowing what you now know, you're fundamentally changed. And not because everything suddenly makes sense, but because pretending nothing happened is no longer an option. I've been thinking about that a lot this weekend, because what we all witnessed in Minneapolis wasn't just disturbing or controversial. It felt so significant, like a crossing into new territory, after which the explanations so many have relied on will no longer hold. The United States was founded on a radical idea for its time, that the most profound power imaginable, the power over life and death, would not belong to individuals or to fear. Our founders understood that tension would always exist in a free society, that power would inevitably try to expand, and that fear would always demand shortcuts. And so they built a system of restraint, due process, accountability, transparency, precisely so that who gets to live and who gets to die would never be up for moral debate in the street. That history and that legacy matters, especially now, because what happened to Alex Preddy changes that promise at its core. Alex was an ICU nurse who spent his career caring for people at the most vulnerable moments of their lives, oftentimes veterans at the end of their lives. He was a healer and a helper, someone who showed up that day not with violence, but with care. He was peacefully observing, documenting the reality of this moment so that history wouldn't forget. Acting within the rights this nation affords to its citizens, trying to help a woman who slipped, doing what we tell people is good, what we tell our kids is good, what we say we value. And he was executed at the hands of a rogue government agency lacking any sort of transparency, accountability, or self-control. We all saw it from every angle. And then within hours, leaders at the highest levels of our government labeled him a domestic terrorist. Not after a trial, not after evidence has been weighed, not after the facts were established. Immediately. This is the moment where I want you to pause, and not just as a voter, not as a partisan, but as a parent. Because when you become a parent, something shifts. Politics become personal. The old talking points fall flat, and what takes their place is something older and deeper. The responsibility to keep your child safe and to raise them in a society where life is treated as sacred, not conditional. The moment we're in right now should surpass partisan politics. This is about the deepest truth all Americans know to be true, that our society does not afford anybody the right to take someone's life. Not an agency, not a badge, not a uniform, not without accountability, not without the rule of law. If we accept that the state can decide in real time on the street who is a threat, who is disposable, and who deserves to die, then we are no longer living under a system of laws. We are living under a system of force. And parents feel this first, because parenting is an act of trust. Trust in our instincts, that schools are safe, that doctors have our kids' best interests in mind. Trust that our laws exist to restrain violence, not justify it. When an ICU nurse is killed while acting peacefully and then posthumously turned into a villain, parents don't see an abstract political incident. We see our own children and a future we don't want them growing up in. What if this was your child? You can say, oh, I can't imagine. But look around. You have to imagine it, because the threat is real. We are at an inflection point. We can choose to be passive recipients of information, filtered, framed, and explained away by people who do not care if we live or die, or we can believe what we can see with our own two eyes. And if, like me, years ago, you have a nagging pit that you cannot kick, I hope you'll listen to it. You don't have to change who you are. You don't even have to admit that you were wrong. But what you can do is admit, even if only to yourself, that you were lied to. America was founded by rebels who broke from a tyranny to build a new kind of nation, one built by and for the people. Not a perfect nation, but a principled one. A nation where power answers to law and not the other way around. Where anyone who signs up to serve the public takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This isn't about outrage, it's about responsibility. And parenting teaches you that what you normalize becomes the world your children inherit. Because once a society crosses a real threshold like this, the only way forward is to tell ourselves the truth about where we are and to decide whether or not we are willing to live up to what that truth requires.